And that was Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondik speaking earlier this week, talking about those sweeping powers being considered by the province of Alberta. Bill 20 would give the provincial cabinet the ability to remove municipal councillors and repeal municipal bylaws, among other things. In this latest bill, is this latest bill rather overreach by Danielle Smith's government, or is it really, or will it really just be used as an item of last resort? Let's bring in the front bench. Sabrina Grover was a federal Liberal candidate in the 2021 election. She's now principal at Shakti Strategies. Melanie Paradis is a former communications director to Erin O'Toole. She's now the president of Texture Communications. Former Ontario NDP MPP Gurritan Singh, he's now vice president at Crestview Strategies. He's also the brother of federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and CTV News senior digital parliamentary reporter Rachel Aiello. Welcome to Friday, everyone. Sabrina, let's start with you. You're in Calgary. How is all of this playing out there?
Well, let's just say that Danielle Smith is basically your worst, nightmare micromanagement boss come true. The kind of person that operates on 20% of information, but insists on being in your back pocket for everything that you're doing. And I think that's basically what this bill is, right? So from the outset, I think it's incredibly tone deaf to have both Bill 18, which is the get out of my backyard bill aimed at the feds delivering federal funding to municipalities, and have Bill 20, which fully inserts themselves into the electoral process and really just governing process that municipalities are operating on at the same time. It makes no sense, and it isn't being received well. And when the province talks about being not consulted and having no information to operate on, I mean, they're treating municipalities the same way. They haven't consulted on this bill, just like they didn't consult on Bill 18. There's no information on that they have received anything about any of the changes that they've made. And like people keep saying, no one asked for this. And that's true of so many of the bills that have come through in Alberta. And this is being received with a big, lumpy thud here in the city of Calgary and in the province.
Melanie, earlier I was speaking with the minister who said they already had this power. That power that he's speaking of was really to go through the legislature and vote somebody out in that way, not just by cabinet order. So in your mind, is this overreach?
No, so I think the spirit and intent behind this is transparency and accountability. And it's all about getting municipalities to focus on the things that they were elected to do. So municipalities across the country, we're starting to see them wildly overreaching into areas of jurisdiction that has nothing to do with what they were elected for. One of my favorite examples is from Calgary, where just a few months ago, after the Supreme Court ruled that the single-use plastics ban was unconstitutional, the city of Calgary decided to say, no, actually, we still want to ban single-use plastics. We still don't want you to have plastic straws. And so they're wading into things that have nothing to do with fixing potholes and getting houses built. And so the provincial government is saying, we want you to get back in your lane with this legislation.
Gurritan, the minister was giving the example earlier on from 2021 when the city of Edmonton had a masking bylaw that the province later legislated against. Does that make sense to you, or what Melanie is saying as well, for municipalities basically to stay in their lane?
I don't know this position, how the Conservative government or Melanie can have this position about the Conservatives staying in their lane, or rather cities need to stay in the lane, when the Conservative government has not stayed in their lane. The Conservative government in Alberta should be focused on things like fixing their crumbling healthcare system, like fixing their education system, like making sure the power is not shutting off during the coldest months in the winter. And instead, we see this track record by Danielle Smith time and time again. Instead of focusing on the issues that have literally put her province in a crisis, we see this government inserting themselves on local democracies that have a large mandate. When you're elected by the people of a city, then yes, you have a mandate to provide a variety of decisions that address the people within your city. That's called local democracy. And to somehow say that this is outside of the mandate of cities is completely inaccurate. And beyond that, what's really out of line right here is the fact that the province of Alberta is not focusing on what should really matter to them. Why are they focusing on local democracies when they have a crumbling infrastructure, They have issues with power. They have issues with their healthcare and education. That's where they should be focused, not on local democracies.
But Rachel, this is on top of that other bill that they had introduced, and it was all about jurisdictional issues, which is forcing the feds to deal with the provinces instead of going through the municipalities. How do you see this jurisdictional battle playing out?
I think it is really interesting when you think about how Danielle Smith would react if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau decided that something that we would otherwise have to take through the House of Commons and vote on, I'm just going to let my cabinet decide. It's one of those things where you have to think about the precedent you're potentially setting. How would you like that done on to you? But the other thing that struck me from your interview, Mike, was when you were asking, in what authority do you feel like you have the ability to pursue this? What did Albertans tell you? He really didn't have a clear answer on what information they're basing this on, other than them being preoccupied about what could happen in an emergency pandemic situation again. So I think it's a bit interesting when you look at the example he gave versus all of the other measures, electoral tinkering and such, that are in this piece of legislation, that example doesn't quite cover. So I'll be curious to see how this one plays out, and if it's just another one of those, hey, look over here from Alberta, another piece of legislation getting headlines and getting attention, while there's other things like the anti-trans legislation, for example, kind of moving through in the background.
Yeah, and Sabrina, I asked the minister if he, about Alberta sovereignty. Do you feel like Danielle Smith is creeping closer to full-on sovereignty?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I love about the way that Danielle Smith has operated since becoming premier is that every single bill is sweeping changes, right? Whether it's Bill 18, whether it's the trans legislation, whether it's healthcare reform, every single bill seeks to overturn everything we've known, but also without consultation, which I think is key to their ethos, is they continually ask for jurisdictional consultation, and they are doing none of that. And I think speaking to what Mel was saying earlier on, this is asking people to stay in their lane. I think it's much more insidious than that, right? So when you actually look into the bill, you see things like they're going to ban or prohibit electronic tabulators. That is a dog whistle to their base. That's a dog whistle to the conspiracy theories and, questioning with the legitimacy of elections. This isn't stuff that anyone's asking for, and it's also stuff that's being governed by that Take Back Alberta sense of their base that's giving them this direction. It muddies electoral waters. It ruins the electoral independence of the local elections authority, and it continuously gives the province more authority than anyone has asked for them to have. And again, no consultation.
Melanie and Gerrit, and I've got a minute left. I'll try and split it between the two of you, 30 seconds each. Melanie, you start us off here.
I just want to note that there are some really interesting items in this bill. It is a sweeping piece of legislation. There are things like making mandatory police criminal record checks for people who want to run for municipal office. I think that should be a no-brainer. There's expanding special ballot access to make sure that people can vote, and also some restrictions on third-party advertising to keep outside influence out of municipal elections in Alberta.
Okay, Gerrit, I'm going to give you the last word on that.
The main outside influence that we need to keep out of Alberta politics is Take Back Alberta. They're divisive politics that are fueling conspiracies and attacking local democracies and attacking elected officials, especially on the local level. This is a bad decision by Premier Danielle Smith. It's something that attacks democracy at a local level, and it's something that should be opposed at all levels.
Okay, we got to take a quick commercial break.